Greetings and salutations YouTube, my name is Etchy Charmed and today we'll be doing a video on the peon of power fantasies, the Page of Blood. The Page is one of the exploitation classes of Homestuck, the passive counterpart to the Knight and the inverse of the Thief. Pages start off being incredibly weak and lack understanding in their aspect, but without ghosting their inversion. Tavro started off Sagrub as a paraplegic with little self-esteem. Jake thought he had an understanding of hope and believing in stuff when he really didn't. And Horace started off as a completely blank slate. However, once they get to the top of the god tiers, they become powerful enough to rival a Lord or Muse, the two master classes, and seem to provide their aspect, allowing exploitation of it and inviting exploitation through it. Basically, they're the class of untapped potential, and when they find it, look out. A good example of this would be the Onion Knight from Final Fantasy III. Blood is the inverse of breath and has to do with being grounded, ties, bonds, responsibilities, connections, being inflexible, and blood itself. And I guess flesh as well. Those who are bound to the aspect of blood draw strength from the bonds, relationships, and friendships that they've developed throughout their lives, kind of making them like your average fairy tale character. They're natural leaders, but their strength lies in guidance and inspiration rather than some dominating, commanding force. They can be the ones to push their team in the right direction and be that extra nudge they need to achieve victory. Some will do their best to keep their ship from sinking, while some others will work even harder than usual while that ship is sinking to make sure everyone makes it out alive and well. However, the Bloodbound can have their fair share of disasters in their relationships and life in general, so they'll need to rely on their friends and comrades more than ever in those moments. However, since the aspect revolves around being grounded, when they're at their worst, the Bloodbound can become inflexible and set in their ways, closed off from constructive criticism, and even words of encouragement. At their best, though, their magnetically charismatic personalities can easily draw in crowds of people. Just make sure that this power is used for good, you know? Now, onto the Page of Blood themselves. I personally feel like this page, much like the other pages we've witnessed before, would have some difficulty truly growing into his aspect. For the Page of Blood, however, since the aspect represents not just actual blood, but also bonds and staying somewhat grounded in reality, as opposed to breath's freedom and imagination, I feel like they'd be maybe somewhat of an edgy individual with an interest in power fantasy or escapist media like Fist of the North Star, Berserk, Solo Leveling, anything from the isekai genre regardless of quality, you name it. Feeling like they need to be some kind of aura farming, super cool badass 24/7 in order to attain some self-worth or achieve anything in life. Or just to distance themselves from reality as much as possible, leading to them having difficulty with forming bonds and friendships in the first place, which might make it difficult to hop into Suburb and really grow into their own. Maybe the Page of Blood, similar to Dave, would wield swords as their main weapon. But instead of them being low-quality crap, for lack of a better word, they'd actually be very high-quality tools of combat. However, in exchange for quality, they'd be very heavy and cumbersome. So heavy, in fact, that the page might hurt themselves just trying to lift one of them, much less properly wield one in a fight. However, they might be too arrogant to size down to something more manageable, even if a close friend tried to gently suggest doing so. Think of someone like Cody Walsh from the Unsleeping City Chapter 2 in his Thirsting Blade Dark Excalibur Mega Genesis. Although, part of their arc might lead to them either sizing down into a still admittedly really cool, pretty awesome weapon, or ironically, just becoming strong enough to wield their big freaking weapon no problem. Some problems really can be fixed with push-ups, sit-ups, and plenty of juice. Kind of a nice segue into things, I, as well as the biggest fan of this channel, so thanks to him for the idea, feel like the Page of Blood's powers and abilities would primarily revolve around friendship and bonds. Peak Persona protagonist type stuff, if the protagonist was a brat obsessed with cumbersome swords and escapist fantasy. They'd start off with next to no friends, and eventually, upon maturing further and further as a hero of blood, would gain a steadfast group of friends and maybe even an army that could rival what Tavros brought against Lord English. All of this would peak into the page receiving a massive amp in overall stats, just from how many of their friends are around. The power of friendship is real, and it's more than prepared to topple a king and queen. I believe that's all I have to say on the matter. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and share it. If you'd like to see more, then please subscribe and maybe leave a class spec suggestion in the comments below. Or maybe even a whole video idea you'd like me and my handsome voice to tackle. Another thanks to my close friend and big fan of the channel, Zach, for his help with what powers the Page of Blood would have, and a big thanks to all of you for getting me to over 300 subscribers over the years. My sincerest apologies for not saying this sooner, but it is genuinely appreciated, on top of all of you coming to view, like, and comment on my stuff between the lack of uploads. So, here's hoping y'all will be interested in my next video on the Muse of Time, which will definitely be one of my more challenging videos to take on. So with that, I bid you dudes, dudettes, and others adieu. Bye!